Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte. Later in the show, a walk around the Quabbin to see who actually has water access and who's trying to change that. We'll hear an update from NEPM reporter Alden Bourne about the ongoing issues surrounding the reservoir and how Beacon Hill might be changing that shortly.
And we'll talk about some of the most fun ways you can misspeak or sing with word nerd Emily Brewster as we continue down the list of questions and topics suggested by one of our listeners.
But first, we read. We're doing this instead of Valentine's Day.
Nice.
Yeah.
We made you our Valentines.
Yeah, will you be our Valentines? That will be it. You're our radio Valentines today.
Today on Valentine's Ash Wednesday.
Yeah, right.
Oh, that too. Okay. Yeah, we've really got a lot going on.
For nearly a decade, Amherst College has been putting on a literary festival showcasing high-profile authors and poets on campus and off. And this year's Lit Fest features comedian Aparna Nancherla, Amherst College, class of 2005.
Aparna Nancherla is a comedian, writer, and actor. She's written for Totally Biased with W. Kamau Bell and Late Night with Seth Meyers. Aparna was also named one of the 50 funniest people right now by Rolling Stone, the magazine.
Not the band. I bet they would think that she's funny, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You may have watched Aparna as Grace, the belabored HR rep on the critically acclaimed Comedy Central show Corporate. She also has a half-hour special on the second season of The Stand-Ups on Netflix, as well as appearances on Late Night with Stephen Colbert, Two Dope Queens, Modern Love, Bob's Burgers, and lots more.
You can hear her as the voice of Moon on Fox's The Great North, or as the voice of Hollyhock on BoJack Horseman. You can currently watch Aparna in The Drop on Hulu, or as Dr. Pocha on Lopez vs. Lopez.
We are also joined by one of the organizers of the Amherst College Literary Festival, Jennifer Acker, Amherst College, class of 2000. Jennifer is the founder and editor-in-chief of The Common and author of the debut novel, The Limits of the World, which was a fiction honoree for the Massachusetts Book Award.
Her memoir, Fatigue, is a #1 Amazon bestseller, and her short stories, essays, translations, and reviews have appeared in The Washington Post, Oprah Daily, and the Yale Review, among other places. Acker has an MFA from the Bennington Writing Seminars and teaches writing and editing at Amherst College, where she directs the literary publishing internship and next week's Lit Fest. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So fun to be here. I'm an avid listener.
Oh,
no.
We love it. Well, let's start with you then, Jen, because you're an avid listener, and we definitely want to cater to the people that love us. We know Aparna is going to be a part of this literary festival next week. Tell us who else you're excited about that will be part of this event at Amherst College.
It's a great lineup this year. I'm very excited about so many people. I will be interviewing Aparna, which I'm very excited about. So, maybe that's top of the list. But there are so many other really wonderful people. Science writer Ed Yong is coming. So you may have read his coverage in The Atlantic. Our presidential scholar this year is Natasha Trethewey, multiple-time U.S. Poet Laureate, wonderful memoirist and poet. And then we have two wonderful poets, Ilya Kaminsky and Katie Ferris, who will be joining us on Sunday afternoon to share their poetry. The Common interns and some alumni authors will have a moment in the spotlight to read and share their original work. So we have some excellent other alumni authors, in addition to Aparna, who are coming for a different event. And then our kickoff event, I'm sort of working backwards in the schedule, is an event that we have every year in partnership with the National Book Foundation. And this year it's also in partnership with the Jones Library of Amherst, in which we have Paul Harding, who won the Pulitzer Prize for Tinkers several years ago, and Justin Torres, who won the National Book Award this year for his novel Blackouts. And so the two of them will be in conversation. They were both honored by the National Book Foundation this year, and that will be opening up the festival. So we can't wait for that.
It unofficially starts next Thursday at the Powerhouse with a spoken word event for Amherst students, and then goes Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of next week at Amherst College. And we're joined by one of the founders and organizers of the festival, who's been giving us the rundown on this wonderful event, Jennifer Acker, as well as Aparna Nancherla, the wonderful comedian and actor who's also part of it.
Before we move to Aparna, Jen, what's the importance of having events that are student-driven as part of this as well? Because not every college would necessarily do that and make sure that there are events where student work is being showcased, student work is an active part of the festival itself.
Yeah, thank you for asking about that. It's really very much in line with the college's mission as a small liberal arts college to have events that are catering to students and that showcase student work. And so from the very beginning, LitFest has included events that showcase student creativity and talent. The Spoken Word Festival is always a highlight. Some really talented students gather their nerves and get up in front of their peers and really give some knockout performances. So that's always been an exciting part of it. And then the Common as a literary magazine, even though we are a global magazine publishing writers from around the world, we are staffed heavily by Amherst College students. And so it makes sense for us to showcase the students who are working so hard day in and day out on the magazine, to give them an opportunity to share their creative work, because all of them are burgeoning artists of some kind.
So does that mean the Common is Amherst Common because it's Amherst College is right on the Common, and you started the Common, and all these people at Amherst College are part of the Common?
Yes.
You heard it here first.
Okay.
I love it. We're talking about the Amherst Literary Festival, which begins next week, mostly Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And one of the people that will be featured that Jennifer Acker will be interviewing is comedian Aparna Nancherla. Now, Jennifer still is connected with Amherst College, so she can't maybe dish the dirt, but you can, Aparna. You are an Amherst College student. Tell us what your time at Amherst College was like. Did you go there for comedy, like Eugene Merman did down the street at Hampshire College, where he created his own comedy major?
Yeah, I remember. I wish I could say I did. I was eager to try out for the improv group when I was at Amherst, but I did dip my toe into stand-up while I was a student there, and maybe performed at one or two Marsh coffee houses, which were like the artsy open mic nights.
Nice.
But yeah, I wouldn't say my comedy career really took off in the Pioneer Valley, but if it would win more fans, I will say that.
Well, good, because that's who's listening to the show right now, people
exactly
people in the Valley. So please go.
I was going to say, you find out in her memoir that she was a psychology major, and I was going to ask, did you write while you were at Amherst? Did you participate in any of the writing things that were on campus?
Yeah, I did more, like, instead of kind of pursuing an English major, I went more the extracurricular writing route. Like I wrote for Prism magazine, which was sort of a literary magazine. And then I think briefly was editor-in-chief before a horrible scandal. No, before someone else took it over. And also ran the Amherst Satire magazine, which I also don't think is still in effect, but that was called The Hamster, which is an anagram of Amherst.
Do you think that they fell apart because your leadership was no longer there to keep them driving forward?
I think maybe my leadership made them fall apart.
Drove them
my lack
right
of
into the
leadership
ground.
made them fall apart. Yeah.
Right into the material of your book. Good job.
Aparna, you're living in LA now, right?
Yes.
And you're kind of from the DC-ish area, if I remember correctly?
Correct. Yeah.
So tell us what your impressions are of Amherst, Western Mass, your loves and hates of this region.
I mean, I love New England in general. It's like very pretty. It's very cozy. Like I love a good bed and breakfast vibe. And I feel like Massachusetts can serve that up quite well. I also just think the Five College area is just kind of, I don't know, it's quirky in its own way. And I don't know, I don't think I've experienced another area quite like it. I just feel like it has its own character and flavor to it. That's like a little bit hippie, a little bit sporty. It just has a little bit of everything.
On the way, we'll mix words with the best of them with Merriam Webster senior editor Emily Brewster and maybe a couple of eggcorns.
We will put them all in one basket, and we'll hear about which way and to whom the water is flowing around the Quabbin with NEPM reporter Alden Bourne.
But next, more with Aparna Nancherla and Jen Acker, who will be at a Lit Fest at Amherst College next week.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
We're speaking with Aparna Nancherla, who is part of the Amherst Literary Festival, which begins next week, as well as Jennifer Acker, who will be interviewing Aparna Nancherla at that literary festival and welcoming and organizing so many other great literary figures. There are a lot of great writers who live here in Western Mass, a lot of them associated with Amherst. Tell us what it is about, is it the Connecticut River that in the water here that makes it such a hotbed for great authors, Jen?
Well, it's a wonderful place to live. So I think that really draws people and keeps us here. Also, the 5 colleges provide a lot of opportunities for people, whether you're teaching or maybe adjuncting or maybe like me, some combination of everything. Like you went to school here and then you fell in love afterwards and you never left. And so, but I think there are a lot of reasons that people stay, but there are also wonderful, museums in the area. The natural beauty is inspiring. But you're right, there's some X factor. Maybe we can figure out what it is on this program. You guys should know. You interview all the authors. You tell me, like, what is it that we're all here doing and enjoying so much?
I don't know. I was going to say that it's mostly the winter that when it comes, we don't want to go outside. And so you're forced to stay in with your projects and give them a real hard look and decide whether or not they live or die by spring.
Yeah.
But climate change seems to be shifting that just a little bit.
Yeah, we need a little bit of suffering to hone great works.
No, we talked about this with Ted Leo. We're not allowed to say that anymore. Suffering is not necessary.
Well, the Puritans would certainly agree with you, but maybe we've moved beyond that. Hopefully.
Yeah, let's hope. Aparna Nancherla, you are not just a comedian and an actor and a voice actor, but you are an author, and you have a book called Unreliable Narrator, Me, Myself, and Imposter Syndrome.
It's wonderful.
Yes, we were looking over it. It's really funny. And
I loved the prose in it so much.
Thank you. That's so nice.
when you talk to somebody at your level that has done these things that we mentioned in your intro here, it's hard for some people to imagine how anybody would have imposter syndrome when hearing an intro or a bio like that. But talk about your struggle with imposter syndrome, which I think pretty much almost everybody deals with at one level or another.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's framed a lot of the way just that I've approached life, which is kind of from a place of self-doubt. Like I feel like the empowering, can-do American attitude would be like you get to a place in your career and you're like, I hope, you guys were ready for me because I deserve to be here and here I am. And now we can finally make something good. Whereas I've always been like, do I deserve to be here? Like, are you sure my invite wasn't an error? Like, I think I'm always kind of a little bit tentative with opportunities. And I think in a way that's helped my comedy in that I'm always been a little bit on the sidelines, taking everything in, kind of absorbing and making that into its own perspective. But with age, I think you learn that nobody really knows what they're doing and you kind of just have to learn to fake it in your own way, because that's essentially what everyone's doing.
Right.
In light of that, I feel like there are definitely some influences of your psychology degree, both on your writing and your comedy.
Yes,
Could you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, people are always like a psychology major, but then you did comedy. What's that about? But I mean, psychology, I would say as a major is the most navel-gazy of the majors, along with philosophy probably. But I just feel like you can apply everything you learn directly to yourself and people you know. And I think I found that just an engaging thing in and of itself. Whereas history or law maybe sometimes felt a little bit more abstract or obscure.
And what's funny about it? Well, I mean, history can be funny. The law is not that funny.
Law is pretty funny sometimes.
Delving deep into your own psychology, that's funny.
Yeah.
I mean, Boston's bylaws about horses.
Yeah, their stuff is funny too, I guess.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess true crime is having a moment. So who am I to poo-poo the law?
And now Jennifer Acker, who is one of the organizers of this literary festival happening at Amherst College next week, Friday through Sunday mostly. Your book is not a novel. It has more to do with your relationship with fatigue and chronic fatigue. So we're talking about imposter syndrome with Aparna Nancherla and fatigue and chronic fatigue. Tell us a little bit about your struggle with that and bringing that to the page.
Yeah. So I wrote this sort of a short memoir about fatigue, about having chronic fatigue syndrome, which I've had for many years now, almost a decade, and it really changed my life in a pretty serious way, and in a way that actually does dovetail with this conversation, that I sort of had to pretend to be a well person most of the time, and I still am doing that. I still have my job, I still write, I still try to do all the things that I did before, but I have to do them very differently. But the doing of them differently happens largely behind the scenes. Like that, I step out of things early so I can take a rest. I do things a little bit more slowly. I take naps. I have to, get a lot of sleep. So there's a lot of sort of behind the scenes things that happen just to take care of myself. And that does lead to a lot of self-doubt. And, should I really still be doing this? And how much should I tell people about what I'm going through? So, Aparna, I really admire what you've put on the page in terms of thinking about your own mental health struggles and thoughts about anxiety and coming at things with self-doubt. And I think that that's tremendously helpful and buoying for other people who are thinking through and working through similar things. And so, I did try to be a little bit public about my struggles, which was nerve-wracking to do. I thought, am I going to get fired? Like, is my boss going to find out that I have this condition and I didn't tell anybody?
With all the clout you get from having a bestseller, like, are you serious?
Yeah, right. They're psyched you published a book at a college. They love that.
It's like, you're on what list? Yes, thanks.
Yes, exactly.
Here's a track. It's called Tenure. But both of you have written memoirs, and Jen, you've also written a novel. Would you mind talking about, like, what drew you towards memoir instead of having these experiences inspire fiction instead?
Well, for me, in this particular piece, I was so consumed with my own illness at a certain point that I couldn't write fiction. Like I was actually too tired to write fiction. So the fatigue comes with a lot of brain fog and just sort of difficulty thinking through things. And so for a while, I thought I would never write fiction again. That was difficult, and my own experiences in terms of just my daily life, and a lot of the memoir is about illness and marriage. Like what happened to my marriage when I got really sick? How did we learn to take care of each other? Moments that were really scary, but also things that brought us closer together. My husband also had a sort of a debilitating condition for part of the time that I was sick. And so it never occurred to me to write fiction out of that experience because I just couldn't think farther than my own face. Like it was just a great act of solipsism, in a way. There was just no other direction to go in but to go inward, I guess.
I kind of want Aparna's answer to my question about doing memoir instead of fiction.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I mean, for me as a stand-up, I primarily mine from my own life. So I think I was like, book assignment, I'm going to be writing about myself. I mean, I would love to write a novel one day, but I think it will still be autofiction at best. Character will be named like Aparna.
No one will ever know.
Well, it's a pretty hot trend right now, so I wouldn't worry too much about it.
Yes, yeah, it seems to be, doing well.
Aparna, I know you're in LA now, but you spent time here. You're an Amherst College alum. Amherst's rock god, Jay Mascis, just trashed the restaurants of Amherst in a podcast. But what's the first place you want to go eat when you come back to your alma mater here in the Valley?
Oh man, I haven't been back in so long that I'm not sure if the places I know are still open, and now I'm blanking on Antonio's. I guess Antonio's I gotta try to see how they're holding up over the years.
Legendary.
Because I haven't been back in like a decade.
It's still there and probably still pretty much exactly the same. Although that's like when Harrison Ford is there at Amherst College and his son is graduating, that's where he goes to get a slice too. So you're in excellent company.
Oh, good. I just remember they have one where they put tortellini on pizza.
Oh yeah.
It's like no, they're not a shred of self-doubt in this recipe.
No imposter syndrome here, pizza.
Jen, is it weird? What's the experience like working where you graduated from?
Yes, weird. It is.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's weird in so many ways. I graduated and then suddenly I was supposed to call my professors by their first names. And, that was weird. And it's only gotten weirder since then. And so, and now I get to feel incredibly old because I work with college students and they remind me all the time of how many years ago I graduated. But, in good news for Aparna, my interns told me that she is the only cool alumni we have ever had of Amherst College.
Wow.
That's
so they are really excited.
It is.
That's very kind.
We're making it official. The coolest alumna of Amherst College ever, Aparna Nancherla, returns to Amherst College next week for the Lit Fest, illuminating great writing and Amherst College's literary life.
Aparna, after Lit Fest, where will people be able to see you next, besides on streaming platforms? We told them about that.
Oh, I believe, I mean, they can still hear me on the Great North on Fox, but in terms of like live dates, I think I'm in Tucson next. Tucson, the Southwest.
We should arrange a comedy.
Coming in here to get a little bit of the cold and then immediately leaving. Yeah. Enough of that.
Immediately fleeing.
The dry heat. Aparna Nancherla will be part of the Amherst Lit Fest, illuminating great writing in Amherst College's literary life next Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And Aparna will be interviewed by one of the organizers, another alumna of Amherst College, who is also a best-selling writer in and of herself of the memoir Fatigue. Jennifer Acker, thank you both so much for talking to us today.
Thank you for having us.
This was fun. Thank you so much.
We should note that the Amherst Lit Fest is an underwriter, but that's not why we talk with them. We just love Aparna.
Even more now after reading her book and getting to talk with her. She is a gem. Soon we'll chat with reporter Alden Bourne about the issues deep within the waters of the Quabbin Reservoir and how Beacon Hill may step in to provide assistance to those seeking to have access to its waters.
And up next, Hold Me Closer, Tony Danza. Words fail, buildings tumble, and we ensconce ourselves in mondegreens and more with word nerd Emily Brewster.
You're listening to The Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
Time for another Word Nerd segment with Emily Brewster, resident wordster from Merriam, Webster in Springfield. Excuse me while I kiss this guy. We are going to talk about mondegreens at the suggestion of the person that who gave us a bunch of suggestions last week, and we used one of them last week, and the self-declared word police from Montague Center. For those who aren't familiar with mondegreens, Emily Brewster, what is a mondegreen and why is it called such?
A mondegreen is a word or phrase that results from mishearing, especially something that's been recited or sung. Like the lyric that you just said, excuse me while I kiss this guy.
Excuse me while I kiss this guy.
Is a frequent mondegreen that people hear when they hear the Jimi Hendrix song, Excuse Me While I Kiss the Sky. I have a personal story about this one. I was in 6th grade art class. It was calligraphy. And I was feeling good about my calligraphy. I don't know if everybody was, but I had a friend who was also feeling good about his calligraphy. And he challenged me to see who could write the nicest in calligraphy. And the thing he challenged, he said, he made our challenge, which was, excuse me while I kiss the sky. And I wrote out in my very best 6th grade calligraphy, excuse me while I kiss this guy.
Oh my.
Because I didn't know that I actually didn't even know the song really. Like I was vaguely familiar with it. He had older siblings. He knew the song. He was like all about it. And he thought it was really ridiculous and stupid and funny that I had written, excuse me while I kiss this guy in my best calligraphy.
So do you feel mortified every time you hear either that song or that particular mondegreen?
No, I love it.
Okay,
I think
good.
it's such a funny story. Yeah.
Why do we call it a mondegreen?
There was a journalist, her name is Sylvia Wright, and she wrote a column in the 1950s in which she recounted hearing this Scottish folk song. The name of the song is The Bonnie Earl of Moray. And she misheard, here's the real lyric. Oh, they have slain the Earl o' Moray and laid him on the green. And she thought it was, oh, they have slain the Earl of Moray and Lady Mondegreen.
And hence, this misheard lyric becomes the name of misheard lyrics, mondegreen.
Nice.
Yes, that's where we get the word mondegreen. Do you two have mondegreens that you have done or do or just like?
I mean, of course, now that I'm on the spot, like I can't think of any ones that I naturally heard, but my favorite one is the one from Outkast.
Which is?
I'm sorry, Miss Jackson. I am 4 eels, never meant to make your daughter cry. I am several fish and not a guy.
I'm sorry, Miss Jackson. Ooh, I am for real.
I feel like almost every song I hear is a mondegreen because I'm like not really paying attention to exactly what they're saying until I've heard the song like 1,000 times. And so I just sing whatever it sounds like. But I will say there is a book, Excuse Me While I Kiss This Guy and Other Misheard Lyrics by Gavin Edwards. And there are a lot of fun ones in that book. I mean, the one that I know I don't actually mishear but do use a lot is "Sweet dreams are made of cheese."
Who am I to disagree?
Yeah, then they add "Who am I to disagree" at the end of it.
Who am I to disagree?
Another one that Gavin Edwards quotes in the book that I love, in Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, it's the girl with colitis goes by.
Oh, no.
A girl with kaleidoscope eyes.
The girl with moderate to severe colitis goes by. Yeah, so.
That's a whole series of books. That's actually the first time that I encountered the misheard Jimi Hendrix lyrics, because we were having this talk yesterday where I really pay attention to
Yes.
lyrics.
But Khalees, there must have been a case where you thought that a lyric said one thing and it actually said another if you pay
for
that much
sure.
attention.
But I'm literally going to spend the rest of our time together racking my brain to figure out where it was.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, I know I must have done it a million times too, but I can't think of one that really stood out to me.
My partner's is from Creedence Clearwater Revival. There's a bathroom on the right.
Oh, and then there is, I still don't know what the real lyrics is. The Springsteen / cover of it, "Wrapped up like a douche, another roller in the
I thought
night." I think it is deuce, but it sounds like douche.
Wrapped up like a douche, another roller in the night.
I don't know.
Rolled up like a deuce, yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's a deuce.
It's a deuce.
Yeah,
Which I
but
still-
what does that even mean?
who knows?
I've never understood that. That one's problematic. The lyric itself is problematic because the real word isn't transparent, I don't think.
No.
No.
What about you, Emily Brewster? Were there ones that you misheard? Apart from
well,
"Excuse me while I
definitely
kiss this guy," yeah.
Yeah. I have a colleague who, you said Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. I have a colleague who thought it was Lucy in the Sky with Linus,
Okay.
which I think is really
Oh,
cute.
that is cute.
Yeah.
Lucy in the sky.
Lights, please.
My son came across one not too long ago that I really like, and it's been done on the internet a lot. There's a song, "I'm friends with the monster that's under my bed," but people say I'm friends with the mustard that's under my bed.
Yum.
I'm friends with the monster that's under my bed.
Or the mobster.
Yeah.
I heard mobster.
Kids are all real fun for this one. My favorite one that Pax, my now 10-year-old, did, we referenced this when Fenway's organist was on in the studio with us. He used to call it up, down, funk, as opposed to uptown funk.
Uptown, funk you up. Uptown, funk you up.
So when I went to Fenway and made a Twitter request of Josh Cantor, the organist, I requested up, down, funk on purpose, which he started to use very frequently whenever other people would make that request for the organ. So that's a great Mondegreen right there.
When Theo was little, he thought we also loved that song, and he thought the part "too hot." You know, it's a little bit of a swear word next, but he thought it was "hot bam."
Hot bam.
So hot bam.
Yeah.
So that's what I always say: "Too hot bam."
There's some, like, I know children are ripe for this. My friend's child, Oliver, is really into gorillas. And so when Cracker Island came out, he thought the line from the chorus was, they taught themselves to be a cow instead of they taught themselves to be a cult.
They taught themselves to be a cow.
Oh, that's cute.
They didn't have as many strategies.
They learned to chew their own cud. I mean, I was obsessed with Hamilton for so long, and there was one lyric that I didn't ever look up, but it's totally clear why I would think this. Before Hamilton leaves to go on his duel, where he meets his fate, he leaves a letter for his wife where he says, "Best of wives and best of women," but I always thought it was "best of wines and best of women." And I was like, I wonder why he would say that to her on the way out. I mean, maybe he's just hoping to leave her his wine cellar or
He's hoping
something
she
like that.
ages well in his absence.
Yeah.
Best of wives and best of women.
I think I'd love to hear what favorite Mondegreens the listeners may have misheard over there, misheard as lyrics. Are Mondegreens always lyrics? Isn't there another word when you mishear other quotes and phrases as opposed to Mondegreens?
Yes. This is Mondegreens are one category. It's either something recited or sung for a Mondegreen, right? Like it's a mix-up in your rendition of something.
Mm-hmm.
Mondegreens are distinct from eggcorns, which are also good fun. An eggcorn is a word or phrase that sounds like and is mistakenly used in a seemingly logical or plausible way for another word or phrase, either on its own or as part of a set expression. So the word eggcorn is itself an eggcorn. The term eggcorn was coined by linguist Jeff Pullum. Linguists were talking. There's another linguist who said, like, "Hey, I've noticed this phenomenon. It's not really a Mondegreen. What is it?" This person referred to an acorn as an egg corn. And the key to an egg corn is that it has to actually be logical. And egg corn is like it's the egg that an oak tree hatches from, sort of. Right? There's thinking, there's thought behind it.
And corn in that it is kind of a grain.
Right. I don't know. Another one is nip it in the butt instead of nip it in the bud.
If you're a celebrity and you have work done, we got to nip it in the butt. I used to call it old timers disease. Instead of Alzheimer's disease.
That's a good one.
My grandmother had
That's
it, so she was
spot
an
on.
old timer and she had Alzheimer's disease. So that one's one. The other one is for all intensive purposes.
Yes, that one drives me nuts.
Yeah,
It
I think I
drives me
used to
nuts.
say that, and then somebody was like, "Hey, it's all intents and purposes." Yeah.
Right, but intensive purposes. Right.
Right.
It almost makes sense. People say all over a sudden instead of all of a sudden.
Huh, I've never heard that one. Interesting.
All over a sudden. One in the same instead of one and the same.
Okay.
Hunger
Day
Maids.
to day with a hyphen between them. So day hyphen today instead of day hyphen to hyphen day.
What about this one? It was used to great effect as could be a mondegreen too. And I think some people have transitioned to think this is what it really says, thanks to the inimitable Snoop Dogg. It's a doggy dog world.
Yes.
It's a doggy dog world.
Yeah.
There's so many hip hop references. In
Oh my
this
God!
stuff.
Yeah, but it's what a genius move to do that as a lyric. But then I've really heard people say it's a doggy dog world, and I'm like, are you talking about Snoop Dogg right now, or are you meaning to say it is a dog eat dog world?
The thing I love about that one is that a dog eat dog world evokes this image of brutality and violence.
Yeah.
But a doggy dog world sounds kind of friendly and like just a bunch of doggy dogs.
Smoke a blunt and hang out with Martha
each other.
Stewart.
Hey, Martha, pass me that big Easy Reach lighter in that bowl.
Bowl of strawberries.
Yeah. I mean, if only it were really a doggy dog world and not a dog eat dog world.
Bow wow.
Yeah, kids also come up with these sometimes. My daughter, she would say flatporm instead of platform for Lego. You need a platform. But she called it a flatporm. It's like that kind of makes sense. Like, what's a plat, right? But she understands like flat. It's flat.
My son Enzo used to call Salvation Army Sashime Army, which just sounds so much fancier. So we always still call, I'm going to Sashime Army. Or Pax used to call a helicopter a hair coupler. And I just thought that was the greatest thing. And I still always now call it a hair coupler.
That's pretty great.
It's so cute.
Yeah.
My oldest child is so old, I don't remember anything he said. He's living in a doggy dog world, if you know what I mean.
Laid back.
With my mind on my money and my money on my mind.
In this category of funny things people say, there are two other forms we can talk about. One is the good old malapropism. It's really when you use a word that sounds sort of like another one that you're intending one word and you use a word that sounds sort of like it, but that is absolutely absurd in that place.
Okay.
Like when Jesus was healing the leopards.
It's my favorite of his miracles.
Yeah, he healed them of their spots.
Yeah, that one comes from it's got a literary origin. There was a play written in 1775. This guy named Richard Brinsley Sheridan wrote a play called The Rivals, and there was a character named Mrs. Malaprop, and she was noted for using malapropisms, or what came to be called malapropisms. In this play, she called a gentleman the very pineapple of politeness instead of the very pinnacle of politeness.
I want there to be a pineapple of politeness.
Who lives in a pineapple under the sea?
I just found one from Mike Tyson, though.
What is it?
I might just fade into Bolivian.
Oh, these are so much fun. So mondegreens are sung. Eggcorns are close, but not quite.
And make sense.
And malapropisms are way off.
Ludicrous, and they don't make any sense. Yeah, but there's logic in an eggcorn. Actually, malapropisms, did you see the Glass Onion movie?
I did. Oh, yes. The movie is filled with them.
A veritable minefield of malapropisms. The infraction point.
Yeah. And it's an important plot point. That was a funny experience watching that movie and noticing them and being like, huh. And then there's another category These are spoonerisms. Do you know what spoonerisms
yes.
are?
Khalees loves these.
I love spoonerisms.
Tell us what a spoonerism is, Emily Brewster.
It's the transposition of usually initial sounds of two or more words, as in tons of soil for sons of toil. That's something where is rolling off the tongue of all of us all the time now, isn't it? Yeah, there's this British clergyman named William Archibald Spooner. He was engaged in public speaking a lot, but he did these all the time. He was famous for doing these, and yet bravely, he was still in these positions where he was giving these public speeches frequently. According to legend, he once was addressing an audience that included Queen Victoria, and he said, "I carry in my bosom a half-warmed fish." But he really meant a half-formed wish. And he said a half-warmed fish. I really like that.
And he did it on purpose?
No.
Wow.
No, he did not do it on purpose. In my family, we do them on purpose.
Yeah, I think it's fun. I found a couple of really good ones. Is it customary to cuss the bride?
Nice.
I like that.
Yeah, that's a good one. Theo came up with a long time ago, beeping in a sled for sleeping in a bed.
Yeah, well, if you got snow the other day, go down a big hill.
Yeah.
Everybody get out of the way. Beep, beep.
Yeah.
Beep, beep. Yeah.
Beeping in a sled.
Oh, and then you will, Monty, you will especially like this one. He came up with, well, I'll let you do it. It was for party favor.
A farty paver?
Yeah.
Is that what I smell when the rain starts to come in the summertime?
No, it's just a description of my partner.
A farty paver. Well, these are really fun, Emily Brewster. And thanks again to the Montague Word Police and for suggesting mondegreens as a topic. If you have a misheard song lyric, a mondegreen, a misheard but very close to actually true phrase or word, eggcorn, a malapropism, which is way off, or a spoonerism. Yeah, or a spoonerism. Yeah, send it to us at thefab413@nepm.org, and maybe we'll read them on the air. And other questions for the word nerd who joins us every Wednesday. We'd love to have those too.
Spoonerisms are the best. They are my favorite.
Yeah.
Where are the residents and businesses around Quabbin Reservoir getting their water? The answer seems obvious, but is actually the topic of heated debate on and off Beacon Hill.
And we'll discuss the matter with NEPM reporter Alden Bourne next. You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Northeast Solar, offering solar options, energy security, and solutions for the local community. Learn more at northeast-solar.com.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. I'm Monty Belmonte.
And I'm Khalees Smith. In the early 1900s, 4 western Massachusetts towns disappeared from the map. They were flooded to build the Quabbin Reservoir to provide drinking water mostly to Boston and dozens of surrounding communities.
Communities that I like to call Boston-ish.
Boston by proxy.
But those towns closest to the Quabbin don't have access to that fresh, clean water supply. The NEPM News Department's Alden Bourne has been reporting on water quality issues that these surrounding towns are facing and what the Beacon Hill delegation here is aiming to do about it. His piece will debut in All Things Considered later this afternoon. Thanks for joining us today, Alden.
Happy to be here.
For those who don't know, Alden Bourne used to work on 60 Minutes. He's been a great reporter. I've known you for a long time, and I think the work that you do is spectacular. I'm glad to be a colleague with you here at NEPM. Tell us about the history of these reservoirs surrounding the Boston area prior to the development of the Quabbin.
So the search for enough water for Boston has really been, it's all about making a move repeatedly west. So in the mid-1800s, Cochituate Reservoir was built in Framingham, Wayland, and Natick. And in fact, in October of 1848, 100,000 people gathered on the Boston Common to celebrate the arrival of water from the reservoir. But because of the growth of indoor plumbing and immigration, there wasn't enough water for the city. And so the Wachusett Reservoir had to be built northeast of Worcester. And then pretty quickly it became clear that that wasn't going to be enough water. So they had to move further west. And in 1927, the Swift River Act was passed by the legislature, the Massachusetts legislature, which called for the diverting of water from the Swift River and basically taking over the Swift River Valley, clearing out 4 towns of all people, vegetation and buildings flooding it to provide water for Boston and the towns surrounding it.
None of those towns did Senator Ed Markey visit in his entire time as senator, which was one of the accusations that Representative Joe Kennedy leveled against Ed Markey in their campaign, which I thought was hilarious. He lived in Enfield, Massachusetts, one of the towns Ed Markey's never even been to. It's underwater. That's why, unless he's snorkeling or scuba diving, that's why he's isn't there. But the 4 whole towns, the people were uprooted. I think a lot of people here know this story. Growing up in the Boston area,
oh no,
I heard of the
you
Quabbin.
You only hear about the Quabbin. You don't hear about how the Quabbin got made.
Yeah, you hear good fishing, and that's it. But this is a real deal. And
Are you allowed to fish there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can rent boats. People love it. A lot of the genesis of your reporting has to do with a book by somebody who lives in the general vicinity. Tell us about who you talked to for your piece.
So I talked to an author named Elena Palladino who's written a book about this. And in 2015, she bought a house in Ware, Massachusetts. And she'd heard that it had been referred to as the Quabbin House, but she didn't know why. And she did some research, and she found out that a woman named Marion Smith, who lived in the town of Enfield and had to leave the town of Enfield because the reservoir was being built, basically recreated elements of her house in a new house in Ware. She took out the main, she rebuilt the main staircase, trim, doors, all this stuff, because she was apparently so upset about having to leave her home.
And you have a clip from your interview with her that didn't make it in the piece that we'll hear later this afternoon. You want to set this up a little bit?
Well, it's just this farewell ball that was held in April 1938. The last night that these 4 cities existed, basically, before they were disincorporated. And Palladino just talks about what it was like for this woman, Marion Smith, to have to leave her home.
Let's hear that clip.
I think it was very, very difficult for Marion to leave. She was the last in her family to survive and be alive in that last decade while the reservoir was being built. She had to make all of the final decisions about exhuming her relatives who were buried in valley cemeteries, deciding where they would be buried. She had to make decisions about where to go. And, at that point in time, she was in her 70s. And I think it was difficult to pick up a whole life and the lives of all of her ancestors and decide on a new place to live for the remaining years of her life.
That's Elena Palladino, who was speaking to NEPM's Alden Bourne, who joins us to talk about the disincorporation of the towns that have become the Quabbin Reservoir. I'll also recommend a book called Letting Swift River Go. It's a children's book by Jane Yolen, another local author. It's heartbreaking and depicts this ball that Elena was speaking of.
In case people are interested, the book, I think, is called Lost Towns of the Swift River Valley.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we may have her on and I can't wait to read her book.
So part of the issue is with PFAS in the current water systems that are going to the towns that don't have access to the Quabbin's water. What are some of the other water sources in Western Mass? We heard about the reservoirs that were built to have waterways go out east, but what's here?
Yeah, where do the surrounding towns around the Quabbin get their water from, if not the Quabbin?
I think there's basically two ways they get their water. Either they have their own water system. The town of Ware has what's called a cistern, which is basically like a giant giant chamber with a dirt floor, and they have different wells pumping into that, and then they have pipes going to different people's houses. But there's been water quality issues with that water, where there's been iron and manganese in the water, and so that's caused issues at times with brown or cloudy water. And I think it's basically in other towns like New Salem, they just have well water, so that's why this PFAS thing happened at the school.
Gotcha.
How come, I don't know if your reportage covered this at all, but is it just because the Quabbin is so big that it makes itself immune in some ways from the PFAS? It's got so much surrounding preserved land?
Or is there some filtering that's happening with the preserved land that kind of gets some of that away from the immediate potency of the water or potability of the water?
I mean, my take is that the Quabbin is such an important water source for the city of Boston, that the MWRA, which is the Mass Water Resources Authority, is very, very clear about what can and can't happen on that land. Whereas if you're talking about PFAS and there's firefighting foam, or it comes from somewhere else, from a fire department, there's no PFAS leaching out of a fire department, anywhere near the Quabbin. I mean, as far as I know, it's just it's pretty strict what can happen there.
We're speaking with NEPM reporter Alden Bourne, whose piece about this Quabbin story and the water for the Quabbin will air later this afternoon on All Things Considered. And we're talking about how the surrounding towns around the Quabbin don't have access to the water that the Quabbin does have, and that there are problems, PFAS, manganese, and other things. Our Beacon Hill delegation, including our guest from last week's show, State Senator Joe Comerford, is working to try to remediate some of this damage and maybe even gain access to some of these towns to the water that is in essentially their backyard. What is this bill that's been proposed?
So the bill she's proposing would do a few things. I think some of the key provisions are it would create a trust fund that would basically create a fee of 5 cents for 1,000 gallons of water that leave the Quabbin, and that money would go to help the towns around the Quabbin. It would also
help them do specifically with water issues, or would it be
just it would generate $3.5 million a year. I think some of the money could go to the towns, some could go to like different agencies that help the towns.
Mm-hmm. Because right now these towns are doing pilot payment in lieu of taxes for the use of the water, right?
Exactly. Yeah, but that's only on the land above the water, any land that's under the water. So her bill would also change that. So all that land that got flooded that's underwater, these towns would receive pilot payments based on that as well.
Is there an estimate of how much land that actually is?
There probably is. I don't have it.
Yeah. And so what about gaining access to this water? Is that even a possibility that they could somehow tap into the Quabbin Reservoir, or is that not even being proposed?
I mean, it sounds like an easy solution, but I think it's fairly challenging. The town of Ware in 2021 looked at either building a new filtration plant to deal with their water quality issues, and then at that time it was estimated to cost $16 million. They had a study done that says connecting to the Quabbin would cost $22 million. So it's just, for whatever reason, it's pretty challenging just for all the equipment and piping, I guess, that would be required.
We mentioned the other reservoirs that are around the Boston area, the celebration on the Boston Common when the first reservoir was tapped into the city. Those are still continuing to be used in Boston in addition to the Quabbin Reservoir?
I mean, I know the Wachusett reservoirs continue to be used. I don't think the other ones are as active as I mean, the Wachusett and the Quabbin are basically the two main water sources now for the city of Boston.
When you're talking to the author, Alina Palladino, who has this book about this Quabbin house, or other residents in the surrounding areas in Ware and the different administrators in the towns, do they feel that this is an issue of us versus them? Does it seem like we've been forsaken in Western Mass in some ways by Beacon Hill for our water?
I think there's a sense that there's a fair amount of resentment in Western Massachusetts for people not understanding the sacrifices that were made. There's this notion that if you ask the average person in Boston where their water comes from, they may say something like, "It comes out of the faucet, and that's all I know."
Yeah.
I mean, this is kind of what I've heard, and just that they want, they want to have more help given what these communities are dealing with, and the fact that they can't really develop this land that needs I think they agree that it's serving a good purpose, and they're proud that they're playing this role for the state, but they want more help.
Do you think that this bill, H897, has a chance of passing and helping to alleviate some of the damage that has been done to the communities surrounding the Quabbin?
I mean, I'd say it has a chance. I haven't talked to Boston area legislators to know what they're thinking, but.
There's always a chance.
There's always a chance. Exactly.
Yeah, especially I'm looking at Section 6 where it's specifically looking at other river basins to develop in efforts to alleviate some of this. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, and again, what you're talking about, this whole notion of looking into what it would take, because the interesting thing is that the MWRA, the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority, has been exploring adding all these towns north and south and west of Boston. And so the question is, what would it take to get these towns in Western Massachusetts access to? So that's what's actually being explored now.
Alden Bourne is a reporter for New England Public Media, NEPM. You can hear his full piece about this story at 5:50 this afternoon on All Things Considered. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Tomorrow on the Fabulous 413, we're going to a butcher shop just north of the tofu curtain. We'll get a tour at Sutter Meats and see how sustainability can lead to everyone eating more meat ethically with owner Terry Ragasa and his amazing team.
And we'll hear more about the reopening of the Iron Horse and about a Chinese New Year celebration happening at Smith Boak in Northampton. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte.
We'll see you tomorrow on the Fabulous 413.
Yeah, we will.